Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today, I want to talk about why you should challenge yourself. And I'm going to cut to the chase and tell you right now success comes from challenging yourself. There, you can stop watching now. Bye. Let me tell you, when I look at my own life, what I see, and then I can give you some advice on what you can do in your life. So, I've talked a lot about being in school and how I loved it. I think part of that, I was blessed when I was younger. Obviously, I don't have it now because when I was talking about Ricardo Montalban, I couldn't even remember the word trapeze. But I talked about how I loved school. When I was young, I had a phenomenally good memory. In fact, I got tested in elementary school with having an eidetic memory, photographic, but I was told it might fade, and it did. Let me tell you what that was like. In elementary school, I could glance at a page for 30 seconds or so, and then I could see that page in my head. It wouldn't stay there forever. It would stay there for about a day. It would be there very clearly for a few hours, and then it would start to fade, and by the end of a day, I wouldn't have it in my head anymore. However, I assumed everybody could do that, and so when I had spelling tests, I didn't study. They announced a spelling test, and I'd open the book and I'd stare at the page. It had all the words in a blue box in the middle of the page, and then underneath it, it had definitions and use of it in sentences. But the class was just on spelling the word. I would just look at the blue box for about 30 seconds, and then we'd have the test, but it always got 100. I don't think that was good, that that's what I did for my studying, but it helped a great deal. This initial hump in learning is having to know the facts, and then that gets you into being able to discuss them. The learning the facts was the easy part for me. So I loved getting in and discussing and chewing on things. I hope that made me learn far more than the facts did. Well, guess what? By the time I got to middle school, that counselor was right. It started to fade. I was having trouble doing it in seventh grade and eighth grade. By the time I went to high school in ninth grade, it was gone. And I had to learn like everyone else learned. But I had a really good foundation already. And in high school, I often thought I was kind of like a big fish in a little pond. A lot of people told me that. My counselors told me that. And that was fine. I mean, it's like I was using high school was basically, I liked learning in it. But the last 2 years I was in high school, it was somewhere I had to go in the morning because I didn't have 6 period classes that I got out of at 1 so I could go work at my game development job. That was the important thing to me. I was learning so much there, and it was paying me, and that paid for college. When I went to college, I found out I was a big fish in an ocean, and that ocean had a lot of other fish in it, and some of those fish were way bigger than I was. But guess what? I liked it. One of the fondest memories I have of college is being in a project class with all honors students. And we had to make an automated factory, and we only had one robot controlled arm, and I got to code it. I was the only of all the engineering honor students, I was the only one doing computer science, and I had a lot of experience, and I knew the language the robot arm was in. So I did that, and I liked college so much that even though I had a lot of loans, I found out if you went to grad school, those loans got suspended. So I applied. I got a scholarship for a full paid first year. I was there for 4, so I paid for the other 3, but my first year was paid for, of grad school at UCI. And I went there where I discovered I was now a big fish in an ocean of mostly other big fish. I would say in my graduate school class, I was probably in the bottom third in terms of like how bright I was and how much I picked up on ideas. And those classes were tough. You were expected to remember everything you'd ever been taught. They were not going to go over fundamentals. But it was a new kind of challenge, and I stepped up to it. And I really liked it. I found myself thinking about things more deeply than I ever had and going into far more detail on things. I learned more about computer science in grad school than I did in college. And I thought I had learned a lot in college, and I did, but wow, grad school really opened my brain to how deeply you can go into topics. But throughout all of that, throughout high school and college and grad school, I was always learning new languages. I didn't stop. I didn't learn a language and go, okay, I'm done. So in high school, I learned BASIC first. I learned BASIC by self-teaching it from my older sister's college BASIC book. And then in school, they taught us Pascal. I liked it, but when I learned games were done in assembly or C, I taught myself those two things. I taught myself C and assembly so I could write game routines. And I made little games myself, and then I worked at that game company, Pegasus, which later became Cybron. Then I went off to college. I still worked at Pegasus and Cybron in the summer, but college taught me, we had a class on nothing but programming languages. And I learned C++ and Snowball and COBOL and Fortran, which I thought was dying. I still think is dying, and for some reason is still around. I know it's used a lot in labs, and I get why. All of those are very specific languages. Snowball is for strings. COBOL is for business. Fortran is for science. I get it. When I went to grad school, because I started doing AI, suddenly I learned Prolog and Lisp. And those were very wildly different languages than declarative languages. It was interesting. You gave rules on what the computer could do, but then you didn't tell it what to do. You told it what you wanted its goal to be. And it was a crazy way of thinking about programming. I loved it. Since leaving school, I learned Perl and Python and Java and C# and all that, again, on my own. Remember, this whole video is about challenging yourself. I started making engines at home by myself when I had chickenpox. There was a really bad chickenpox strain that went around in 92 in Orange County, in 1992. People who had chickenpox as kids got it again. Some adults got chickenpox and died. It was that bad. I had chickenpox and strep throat on top of each other. I was stuck at home. I could barely sit up, but I started thinking about engines I wanted to make. I couldn't code anything, and when I came back to Interplay, they had me finish up Rags to Riches. But as soon as I was done with that, and I did my installer, I started making engines. And I did a voxel engine, I did a 3D engine, finally made that sprite engine, and that's what turned into Fallout. Same time I was doing that, everything had been in DOS, but things were switching over to Windows for gaming. So I taught myself Windows, and I realized there was a lot about DOS and Windows that were the same. They were just called differently, and that annoyed me. So I wrote a wrapper. I have a whole video about it. It's called GNW, G-N-W. So I wrapped up the OS of what I learned in Windows, and I wrapped up DOS, and that became the thing I called. I called one thing, didn't have to worry about what OS we were in. That was pretty cool because that's how we got Mac Fallout, because Chris DeSalvo, and then later Tim Hume picked it up, did the Mac version of GNOME. But that was just another way of challenging myself. It's like I had to learn these things. I had to find some way of dealing with all of this knowledge, and I did. What was great about Interplay, by the way, was I started there as a programmer, but I very quickly got to put on a design hat, so now I had two hats on. Then when my producer had too many things and I had to wear a producer hat, I got to wear three hats, and that was great. At Troika, I got to wear an owner hat. At Obsidian, I got to wear, and Carbine, I guess, I got to wear a director hat, which I learned was very different than a lead hat. Because sometimes when you were a director, you stopped doing the things that you wanted to do. You stopped doing the design documents and the code because there were other people who did that. They just needed someone telling them what to do. A lot to learn, but like I said, it's a challenge. It kept being a challenge throughout my entire career. It was one new thing to pick up after another. So if you think you've learned something and now you can go, I can sit back and relax, it's never going to stop. And it shouldn't stop. I got to learn what it was like to develop a game solo, to work on a small team, to work on a bigger team, to run a team, to coordinate the leads of the teams that are running the teams. Each stage of that was something new to learn, something to figure out what I was good at and what I was bad at. So I should probably talk about what the point of this video is. So you need to challenge yourself to be successful. And I think challenge yourself means taking on risk. And I know we've talked a lot about how people seem to be risk averse. I had a video about how cautious people can be. You need to take on some risk. Even if that risk is just you deciding to take some of your own time at home in the evening to learn a skill, to learn a new engine, to learn a new programming language, to learn a new 3D art package, new music generation package, video processing package, I learned Da Vinci, and it isn't easy. Learn it, even though it may never pay off, even though you may risk wasting your own time. The reason you need to do that is you need to figure out what level of risk you can tolerate so you can challenge yourself so you can do better. Because when you do better, you will then be successful. It's not guaranteed. Some of success is timing. Some of success is, you were just in the right place at the right time and the opportunity came about. But if you're not ready to take that opportunity, if you haven't prepared yourself, you're not going to be successful at it. You'll get the opportunity, but you won't be good at it. Without all the stuff I just said about people taking risks and challenging themselves and working harder and trying to do more things, a lot of the games that you love never would have been made. And if you don't do this yourself, your own games aren't going to get made. And I've said this before, Uncle Tim needs games, and I want your games to be made. So, that means I want you to be successful, which means I want you to challenge yourself, which means you're going to have to take on some risks. Please do that. I guarantee you'll come out the other side happier. If there's one thing I just want you to hear me say in this video is, try something new. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to try it. You might be good at it, but either way, you're going to learn something, and either way, you're going to be a better person. So I hope this helps, and I hope you make a kick-ass game for me to play.